This all started when I was feeling very trapped as a new mother, and when I felt like everything looked and sounded and smelled the same as it was before, but absolutely nothing was the same. Time and space had taken a quantum shift, and I didn't know how to explain that to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of panicky, and I felt that I was expected to be able to do everything that I was doing before I had my baby, but I couldn't. I mean, I couldn't even get out of the house. It took me 2 hours. So time had shifted. Space, I know space for anything in my life. I could do nothing but be a mother. I know it just took up all my time, as I do, but nobody tells you this stuff. So I had no way of communicating this sort of invisible kind of cage that I felt I was in. And I felt like I had no support, and maybe I did, but I didn't feel like I did. And so then, after a while, I was asked to write an essay based on phenomenology and performance. And I didn't really feel like writing an essay, but I did feel like writing something. And so I wrote this piece, which was set inside a mother's body. And it was about sort of trying to be present inside this new body and try to understand from an organ perspective, from the perspective of my uterus and from my brain, and try to really investigate what the hell was going on. Why was everything so different? Which is when I came up with, when I uncovered all of that stuff around microchimerism and
stem cells breaking off and
the bidirectional cell transfer through the placenta from your fetus, which then colonizes your organs as a mother, and then operate as functional tissue.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, ooh, that's quite dramatic. That's quite interesting. So I just started writing a little bit about surviving the colonization and how to plan forward from being where I was.
Mm-hmm.
So it all started around there.
And at the early stages of it, I think I remember, was bounding
with unknown others in the process and transformation of becoming oneself. And unknown others are everywhere in the world where you get support even if you don't perceive it.
Okay, and by bounding with, bounding through, bounding down the hill, boundaries,
being bound, absolutely. It had all of those connotations were wound up in the word bounding, and I really felt connected to all of the meanings of that.
The early stages, I remember you working with water-filled objects, balloons, or the element of that water. Kind of weight and water, bags of water.
1,000 uteruses in a room. That's
what my bladder looks
a
like.
A lake of uteruses lit.
Yeah,
with the sun bouncing off the water.
So where did that thought come from, or idea come from? And
that wasn't actually bounding, but that was the part of where the balloons came from. That was accountable transparency.
There was a river of...
It was a big lake of clear latex balloons filled with water, which were like uterus.
Yeah.
Uteri. I was thinking about, what is the mothercraft, or what is this nurturing space? And I was talking a bit about it yesterday. I wanted to create a place of absolute support for myself, where I could put my finger on it and say, Ella is helping me with my physical technique and my practice, and I'm going to come in every day and I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to find the best revelation of all of this material in my body, And I wanted you to do that with me, and Jason was coming in to do the direction, and I mean, for me that's dream team. So, you know, but I wanted to create the biggest or the best support network that I could for myself. And in terms of, because a lot of the questions I was asking myself before are like, what are the skills and abilities that we acquire through becoming mothers?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is to provide support, not just for the children that we're rearing, but for ourselves, so that we can stay empowered in that role, so that we can actually step into that role and own it and claim it, regardless of what anyone else thinks of what that role should be. And so, after working with lots of mothers over the years in workshops, like I did about 2 years, I'd say I worked with about 100 mothers, doing these physical and vocal warm-ups, practices, experiments, workshops in spaces in Limerick and in Dublin. I discovered what women think that their skills are. You know, women started to tell me what they think their skills were, and we're talking things like intuition, telepathy, empathy, compassion, and also the problems being not know when to say no, and the desires being, how do I build a bridge out of this road into another road, and also so that I can get back in, you know, without feeling guilty or without punishing myself or berating myself or taking on all of the social narrative that exists in society around what mothers should be. So yeah, I did a lot of this work, and what I wanted to do with the environment here is cultivate an environment where everybody can be their best selves and really like vibrate at their, you know, their highest level, and work in a place that gives us all comfort and joy. So that was really important to me, that it wasn't just about me making a score, but it was about how do you create an environment where I can be my best self in my practice. Mm-hmm. And so it was two. It was the environment and it was the artwork. How do I create the form and the flow, the banks and the river, and notice my role in both. So I feel like that happened.
Yeah, I think
So
you did a pretty good job with that. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Together and apart, in every moment, I, not I, are in and outside, like the air we breathe. Attune and drift on the exhalation to another stratum of space and return. Intention, a tidal nature of concentration, connectedness and meaning, ebbs and flows. And in the microcosmic millisecond to moment unfolding of the event, the tensions intrinsic, planned and available, and I invite you to meet me.
I come in and I warm up my body and I begin working with the fragments of material that I've been developing over the 5 or so weeks that we've been in the studio. I notice where my body is rejecting the material and where my brain is creating narratives and stories, and part of the practice then is to come back and listen into the body. So it's a feeling body process, and through really tuning in to what that material is bringing up for me emotionally, mentally and physically, I'm able to then create space. So then I can ask you, Ella, I can't get my leg over there, or I'm caught in a really awkward position on the floor and I feel like I can't get on to the next thing, and I ask you, and you say, well, you have to be where you are. And so there's something very philosophical and mindful around that as well. I think you just have to be where you are before you can get to the next place. And that's something that I've really learned here in the studio with you. So technically, I feel I'm working through the score, the fragments of material on lots of different levels, in a personal way, in a technical way, and in a sort of a business way as well, because I'm always throwing my attention out of the room and having to pull it back in to the body. So that is part of the technical practice for me. Also the warm-ups at the beginning of the day, just conditioning and getting myself back into that rehearsal space physically is something that I'm really valuing. Touching my legs because my legs are feeling
Because
the
we
work.
did a lot of squats.
And also the sustained practice, like how we were working yesterday. I think the final time we ran the score yesterday, that was 45 minutes
It was.
of focused work, and it was really extremely focused. So the technical practice isn't just physical, but there's a sort of a whole body experience going on. And to stay tuned in then to the other players that were there in the space yesterday. And also, it's not just that. Part of my technical practice is also about like listening to your notes and listening to Jason's notes, and then sort of putting that in my body and allowing my own body to deal with it. And not worry too much about one is offsetting the other. So just allowing everything to be in the body and in the practice. And it's very moment to moment, and that's one of the things that I really love about this practice, is that you go in and it's completely different to the last time you did it. And so the note will always be a slight variation on the one, and it's working in this just exquisite detail that if you can actually free enough space in the body to manifest it, it can feel so beautiful. So
What is it you need or don't need?
And it keeps putting me back into my own body, which is wonderful. Yeah. So I visualize a big white space at the beginning of time, or at the end of time, where everything is starting, its very first breath, where anything can take shape, where everything begins and where everything ends. And the rules are that you have to follow the strongest survival instinct, you know, to exist, that we are the perfect expressions of the environment that we're created in. So this white blank space is the beginning of everything.
That's very beautiful.
The origin, the beginning at the beginning and the beginning at the end. In order to see what the thing is, I have to code around the outside. This is something that's very, very embedded in the concept of the piece when I think about it. That sometimes you can't put your finger on it. You just have to say what it's not. And then through that process, like a sculpture, it becomes revealed through the practice. And that's what I feel is happening here. And often the times when I'm afraid to chip away at the block because I'll ruin the shape that's already there.
I suppose it's handy to have a little confidence about which bit to chip away at first, or, you know, should the whole thing shatter, or, yeah, in order to let it appear.
I put a lot of time into designing how this creation period was going to happen, in terms of putting together an extremely strong creative team, and spaces that I felt would suit, so big spaces, so we could really stretch my body. And also, when I wanted, at the beginning when I was thinking about working with set pieces, I wanted to suspend enormous screens from the ceiling. So everything that I was doing at the time was creating an environment where I could be extremely vulnerable and really explore and take huge risks, in creative risks, physical risks, dramaturgical risks as well, because you're there and you're sort of going, well, is this the same piece as this? Well, I don't know. Let's just put the two things together and see what happens. And the creation strand of this award has really afforded me the kind of support that I need in order to really create something new for myself. For myself as well, to grow as an artist and really put myself up against all my ideas. Throw myself at my ideas and see what happens, rather than in an intellectual way, but actually test my practice and see, do my big ideas work in the space? And put myself up against peers who I respect and who I think would put it back to me in a way that I really need to be challenged. So everything about this time in the creation period has been so high level and so high stakes, because there's a lot to lose. With this award, I have had the time and space to come into the studio for 5 weeks and really explore it deeply. My practice, the craft, the technique, the ideas, the concepts, with such a strong creative team, with the support of Dance House and with the support of the project. It's just been an enormous privilege and my ideal scenario for creating new work.
To train and condition the body in such a way that gives it strength, flexibility and malleability and gets it ready to work. But the bulk of the day is that's a preparation for the rest of the time, which is an operation which is distinct from producing or coalescing or pulling together a piece for performance. It gives an opportunity to really pull out threads that are concerned with what performance is itself, what your process is in interpreting or engaging with or expressing the themes and concepts and ideas that you've brought into this space.
Which does make it distinct from training, because with all of that behind you, when the process throws you back at yourself as an artist, you actually have the tools to understand, what is this resistance?
Right.
Why am I having a problem moving from this concept to that movement?
Yeah.
I have the skills of understanding that, and what this grant has given me is the expertise to actually open up dialogue with you in a way that I don't have to teach you what I'm trying to work out. You already know what I'm talking about. So this creation space with this award has allowed us to sort of broaden the dialogue around process, performance. In this, it's kind of a protected space where we don't have to think about sound bites for marketing. We're very, very concerned with enriching and developing our practices so that we can use this practice then for distilling out what the concepts are
in the creative process
that we're trying to make. Exactly, the composition.
So it's a little bit, for me, it's a little bit like the difference between a pilot training in a simulator on the ground and then flying the plane in the air in a storm. And a performer needs to be able to fly the plane with all the ability and technique that a pilot has trained with on the ground, but you don't know what's coming ahead of you. You can't know what's in front of you. And so there is this way of having to take that stuff, actually let it slide away. It's simply a support. and instead be able to operate at a very dexterous and precise level with unknown quotients or unknown things.
Yeah, it's the theatrical stage as a platform for practicing being alive in the world, and how that practice can then, like you were saying, be tested by creating even more stimulus outside, like trying to play that really, really sensitive score in the presence of a full drum kit. It was really exciting. And I mean, it just threw even more questions into the space, and the energy was higher. And then to have Fanula Conway in here singing and playing keyboard with us as well, which was so harmonious and so gentle and sensitive, and the listening was so deep and intuitive. It was just to be surrounded by this expertise and find the strength of the process that we've been through to hold that score, and spaces to improvise and spaces to allow new material emerge. I mean, to me that really speaks to the strength of the process and how important this strand has been in developing this material, and seeing the potential for how it can grow by just bringing in 2 more people, how that opened up. I mean, it was spectacular.